Greetings and hello out there in podcast land. This is David.
Hey, and this is Tim.
And you have accidentally or intentionally stumbled upon Johnny Has the Keys, a
Not
podcast
your television set.
a podcast where we sit back and we talk about horror, science fiction, movies, television, literature, various things, give our opinions, but mostly try to correlate how these particular works of cinema affected us and how they've affected other cinema since. And we're very excited about today's episode, but before we jump into it, Tim, what have you been doing? What have you been up to?
You caught me off guard a little bit. I was trying to think of like what one of my favorite things that happened this week was.
Or something you heard about, or something you know, or whatever,
Damn.
I mean, I'll tell you one while you're thinking.
Yeah,
I'll tell
you go
one
ahead and I'll think.
that I've got. I just saw, I think yesterday or day before, one of the two, that The Haunting of Hill House has been picked up for season 2.
Yes.
And it's not going to continue the story. It's going to be like an anthology. And you said yes, they have, so you've heard it too. Did you hear what the title was?
It's The Haunting of Bly Manor or Blythe Manor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Blythe Manor, yeah. And based on another good classic horror story. Short story this time, though. Isn't Turn of the Screw a novella? It's not a full novel, is it?
It is, and it's a good one as far as a classic. To me, it's not as good as The Haunting of Hill House, probably because it's not modern. It's Henry James, and he's if coming from a lit major or an English major, he's a bit stuffy for me.
Yes, yeah, it is kind of like the Haunting of Downton Abbey kind of thing. Yes,
and if you would like if you would like an advance key, The Others, that movie with Nicole Kidman was loosely based on Turn of the Screw as well.
Yes, it's another one of those that's been adapted quite a few times and done a few different ways. It'll be curious to see how our beloved Mike Flanagan does his bent on it and his twist. Whether he'll update it, which I think he probably will. And then what he uses it as the inspiration or the starting off point, kind of thing. So, I mean, that was going to be my what have you been up to sort of thing, because I've been traveling so much I have had little time to do other stuff. But I thought that was pretty cool. What do you got?
I mentioned this to you briefly a couple of weeks ago, but I have been watching The Expanse.
Yes.
Because of your recommendation. I have only watched 5 episodes, but I like it. It's good.
Good. Mm-hmm. I'm glad you do. And it's one of those series that gets better and better. It reminds me a lot of my fandom for Babylon 5, although Babylon 5 is a lot more, I guess, space opera-y, more
Lost in Space.
No. Do not compare Lost in Space and Babylon 5. Oh, my God.
Oh, I thought it might be a family show.
No. Babylon 5 is just much more epic and huge, and it's this very grandiose dialogue, and everybody speechifies and does all that kind of stuff. It's very, has a unique style to it. And this, The Expanse, on the other hand, I think is extremely realistic in the way it portrays. I've talked to friends of ours from NASA and other people we know, and they talk about how they like The Expanse because of the realism of it. The space travel is real. The dynamics, the physics work in it, and it tells a very political story, but with real people consequences. Mm-hmm. So I like the storytelling and the way that it does. I hope you continue to like it, and that's definitely one in the future we should probably. Maybe not do an episode by episode, but maybe do a season arc, podcast on, because it's one of my favorite science fictions in the past few years. Yeah, definitely.
Well, and the Martians are pretty cool. They remind me of Romulans. They're very, or maybe even Klingons. They're kind of very military-esque.
Very military. They're the military branch of
And it's funny that they're Martians, and Mars, was the god of war in Rome. Uh, so
Well,
I didn't. That stuff was not lost on me. So yeah, I've
and
been
what
enjoying it.
I You know, one of the things I thought was interesting was when I first did research on that series, because they say, written based on the series of books by so and so. I forgot his name right now, but this one particular guy. It turns out the one particular guy is a pseudonym for two guys who actually co-write all of the books.
Oh,
And I thought that was kind of interesting that
hmm,
they share one name literarily, and they're a duo.
yeah.
Um, but great science, great tech, well designed show, good acting. Yeah, yeah. I recommend that one. It's a good one.
I'm curious.
Uh,
I could do a brief segue. As far as writing and publishing, I read a lot of I guess what you call indie publishing, people that publish on Amazon. And
mhm,
there's a lot of categories out there for science fiction. You mentioned space opera, and like there's this whole
mhm.
military subgenre. Which would this fall into? More military, I guess.
No, I think this would be more political, societal, like civilization science
Okay.
fiction.
And like,
Um,
where would Star Trek fall? Would that be space opera?
Star Trek would be space opera, I think.
Okay.
Star Trek, although it's telling very Shakespearean kind of little playlets each episode,
Hmm.
they basically deal with this again, this hyper reality kind of feel to their show. The Expanse, I think you'll find if you watch it through the third season, it just continues. The Expanse is a great title for it because it just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger in its scope.
Oh, so it's metaphorical too. That's
Going
cool.
from this small dude who didn't even want to be the second in command of the ship, all the way to Earth, to Mars, to the whole solar system, to the belt, and it goes bigger and bigger and bigger. It's pretty interesting, and then the way all these politics start colliding is really well done.
Hmm.
And it's a huge arc story. I mean, obviously, it's based on a series of books, so that's another reason why it reminds me of Babylon 5 because Babylon 5 is one of the first ever series to tell arc stories where he intended each season to have its own arc, each season then to build to the next season and to have a definite beginning and end. It's a 5 year story, and he's going to have 5 seasons, and then it's going to be done, kind of thing.
So
So
it is each book pretty much a season.
that I don't know because I haven't read the
Okay.
books.
Because that's how they're screwing up with the passage. They are that
Oh, really?
oh, it's not good. It is really
Wait,
not
wait, now, wait. 2 episodes ago on this podcast, you were saying the passage and you like it. Now suddenly we have a change of heart.
well,
And is that because they're not following the book?
pretty much. It's I'll give you one word: padding. Um,
Oh,
it's like they're trying to stretch it out. I
uh
mean,
huh.
it's obviously a trilogy and would already make a good 3 season if they did each book. But the books are fairly large, so it could potentially be 6 seasons if you did one book for 2 seasons. But what they're doing
Right.
is I mean, even Stephen King, I don't know if you follow Stephen King's Twitter, even he was bitching about it the other day, and it's one of his favorite books.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a few years ago he recommended it. And yeah, it's uh, I mean, it started. The reason I was into it to begin with was the familiarity with the characters and the premise. And you're like, ooh, look who they cast. Everything's cool. And then I'm like,
Right.
why is this so long? Why are we still talking about this? Why is this happening? This feels like you're trying to.
Where are the vampires?
Well, there are vampires, but and I like the backstory of the characters, and a lot of that comes in the second book. But they're missing major opportunity that was like jarring in the first book, and it's not going to happen. There's only one episode left,
Hmm.
so that's my rant for
Really?
the week.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pissed about that.
Well, that's sad. I was gonna in my infinite spare time, I was gonna catch up on it because I only watched the first 2 episodes, so I was gonna try to catch up on it.
I'm
But
curious to see what you think.
I still will, I think, in this sea.
I'm ready for a good old nasty vampire movie, like a mean ass one, like Salem's Lot. That kind of feral vampire, not a romantic one.
Aren't they doing a new season of what was it? Guillermo del Toro's one? Wasn't that it? He did
God, that kind of went off the
the
rails too.
strain or the
Yeah,
spawn or whatever it was.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Both
that
of
was a
these
nasty
movies,
vampire there.
yeah, The Strain and The Passage are both that viral type vampire where it was like created in a lab or whatever, and that's okay. I don't mind
Mm-hmm.
that premise. And I guess it's probably becoming its own subgenre now. But
Oh yeah,
I'm talking about the old, the ones that stink of the grave, the ones that are just scary.
yeah,
You
yeah. We
know.
need another good one like that. As long
Yeah.
as Keanu Reeves isn't in it, I'll watch it. It'll be good.
And that Robert Pattinson guy.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
vampires do not sparkle. I'm sorry, they
Nope.
don't.
No
They just don't.
sparkling. I like Anne Rice in small doses, but give me
She
one
needs
of
to get
those
out of
things
Egypt for a
outside my
while.
window, scraping on the window.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
So anyway,
Salem's Lot. That's awesome. Anyway, okay. So speaking, we don't. Well, that was a terrible segue. But let's talk about what we're talking about this week, which is for those of you avid readers, and we hope you are avid. And if you are, please like us and share us and do all those good things and give us good reviews because that just helps us keep doing these podcasts. For those of you who have been following us, we are now in the ninth, the penultimate episode of The Haunting of Hill House, by loosely based on Shirley Jackson by Mike Flanagan and his team. Tim, you want to give us a rundown of the ninth episode, just a little bit of a brief synopsis, and then we can dive in and play with it.
okay. Well, I can. Let me just speak a little bit about the episode, which is some
Sure.
cool stuff. It's called Screaming Memes. Yeah, I have a hard time saying that. Screaming Memes. I have to alliterate.
Mm-hmm.
Which reminds me of Blue Meanies from the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. But it's actually,
Yeah.
you find out what the Screaming Mimi is a little bit later in the episode. But that's the
Uh huh.
title. And this is one of those episodes that is completely in the past, which I found fascinating
Mm-hmm.
because they haven't done an episode that's in one period, have they?
Correct. I think this is the only one that is totally in one period.
Right. And this is Olivia's episode. A lot of the characters have had their
Yes.
own episode, and this is definitely Olivia, the mother's episode. And it
And I
is,
did not realize that until this viewing. I didn't realize that the first time I watched it. I was just so entranced with everything they were giving away or telling now about but this was definitely Olivia's episode.
hmm and it's basically when you see where the from a writer standpoint and the overall arc of all 10 episodes, once they did, the last couple, I was like, wow, they've still got two to go. Where are they going to go with this? Well, this is kind of like the big reveal before the climax and denouement. So this is a lot of backstory and things are in this episode that make you go, oh wow, okay, that's why that happened. So there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of reveal in this episode.
Yes, I got that too.
hmm
And as a general key to it too, it reminded me of oh dear, what's the Stephen King series that came out last year that was good? Castle Rock.
Castle Rock, yeah.
It reminded me of our favorite episode in that particular series because you are seeing scenes that you have seen before throughout the previous 8 episodes just from a different perspective.
Okay, hats off.
And
That's a great key.
I loved the fact that he did that, and he didn't just stop it at we get the gag or we get what's happening. He did it repeatedly. So this is we're in Olivia's mind for what is happening in Hill House from the time they arrive, essentially.
hmm
And I really I liked the way he did that, and I liked the way he told the story. I did see that it was written by someone else. It was written by Meredith Averill, who's written like co-written like 3 of the episodes this season. But this was her only solo credit, so I thought that was it was interesting. What was your overall impression? You liked the episode, I think. Yes.
I do a lot. It's really hard for me to pick a favorite episode, but I would say this is in my top three. Um,
Mm,
Mainly
okay.
because of the writing. The writing is really good. I'm just going to go ahead and end my little synopsis with I will be probably
Yeah.
quoting a lot of lines from this episode that just really
Well,
struck me. So,
I took a lot of notes on lines too. I loved the writing of this episode and the performance. I mean, she's great.
mhm.
Olivia, all the way through this, is it's hard to play. Well, her and Poppy, both, I think, because it's hard to play crazy without an extreme crazy without going so over the top that it becomes unbelievable. Even Lecter in a couple of the later movies, in Hannibal and everything else, as wonderful as Anthony Hopkins is, he started being really forced. I think it was like
Like
forced
Freddy Krueger.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's a great comparison, and
Yeah.
they're both very realistic in this breakdown happening or this craziness that they have. Um, I thought it was very interesting throughout the episode that the counterbalance to Olivia ended up being Mrs. Dudley. I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I love that they gave Annabeth Gish some storyline because she's a great actress, and it was really cool to
Mm-hmm.
see her more in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so well, let's just talk to it, and we don't have to go through every scene, but at least in order, so we can people can follow along with us if they've watched it or whatever. And basically, we open with we're back in time, like you said. This entire one takes place in the past. We open with Olivia, and she's essentially napping or asleep at night with the twins. So she's got Luke in one arm and Nell in another, and she and Hugh talk about it, and it's. For this particular scene, I was really struck by how parental they are and how warm it was actually written, and the fact that it kind of sets up Olivia's whole motivation, really, because her
Her line.
the line I have
Yeah.
is I wish to keep them like this forever.
She says, I wish we could freeze them. I wish we could just freeze them.
Yes, and keep them like this forever, and that's her whole motivation. I mean, maybe that's how the house knew. You know, the house like picked up on that, or Poppy and the rest of the ghosts, or whatever. Maybe they heard that and went, now we know how to get her,
Or
kind
if
of
the
thing. Maybe I
house,
don't know.
yeah, I mean, if the house had a personality, it might be, I could help you with that. Because
Yeah,
that's what I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah.
Here, let me help. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and because I assume, since this is fairly linearly told too, that that's fairly early in their arrival. So that's, the first few weeks or first week or so that they're actually in the house that this happened. Maybe even the first night, because it's the kids are asleep in her arms. Maybe they got scared or whatever. We don't know because we don't hear from them,
Uh-huh.
kind of thing.
I love when, in this very scene, she kind of slips back into sleep, and when the camera pulls back, she's no longer holding both of them. She's only holding Nell, and
Hmm.
Hugh is taking Luke away. And I mean,
Right.
there is some heavy symbolism in that, in that,
There.
Nell is dead and with her, but he's still got Luke, and Luke is not dead.
But Luke's unconscious.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of cool. That's it. Where we left off last week, kind of
Hmm.
thing. That's kind of true. That's kind of cool. And they also set it up. He almost set it up like a fake scare. You know what
Right.
I mean? Because you almost got scared, and then it cuts, and you see that Hugh has Luke, and you go, "Oh, okay. No, she didn't. She
And
didn't
and
eat the child. The child is just being carried away."
and you were
So
talking about the acting, um, being good, her acting. There is a brief glimpse of her as almost like mean Olivia for just a second, and then she's back. She's like, "Where are you going with
oh
him? Yeah,
yeah,
he's mine." Yeah, and then she's
yes,
back.
yeah.
Yeah, so you're
You
seeing
do
that.
get that glimpse of that
Hmm.
little micro expression of don't take that. Excuse me. Where are
Hmm.
you going with
Yeah,
that?
they're
It
mine.
happens to be mine.
I told you I want to freeze them.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway,
uh, And that was a teaser. We want to set up and tell everybody that was actually before credits.
Hmm.
Then they do the credits, and we come back, and we're obviously the morning after the two storms.
Right.
So we are after the big storm, still back in time. Mrs. Dudley is cleaning up. Olivia is wandering the hallways, and they have a great scene together, which, again, to our point throughout this entire series, is he lets these characters tell more about themselves through a story.
Hmm.
And it's Olivia telling her it rained stones story, or it rained rocks,
Hmm.
or whatever. And I thought it was very good acting on both these ladies' parts. I love the way Gish just holds that stare at her, and we don't know, are you acknowledging? Are you thinking she's crazy? Are you not? Are you. It was very unique the way she just kept looking at her without really saying anything. And they kept doing those cutbacks. They didn't leave it just on her. And kind of a key in the same season, it reminded me of like a counter, the opposite way they did the first story in the whole series with the woman who was talking about her husband and how she saw his ghost and he died in a car wreck and all of that. Because it just held on her the whole story. And then at the end, cut away to grown up Luke. Grown up Steve. And this one didn't do that. This one went back and forth between Olivia telling the story and then Mrs. Dudley just staring and listening to her. So it made it, to me, it made it creepier. I don't know about you.
Yeah. And doesn't she talk a little bit about Abigail too?
Yes, she says her daughter's not allowed out. She mentions her 2 or 3 times in that sequence. But more as that protective mother kind of thing. I hope your children learn this and don't go out. That kind of thing.
Hmm.
But the whole story about losing her father, and she, you kind of see some guilt in there too. She blames herself. The line that I wrote down on here is, "When Daddy died, I made it rain rocks."
Hmm.
I thought that was a cool line.
Well,
So
I like the way that scene ends. She talks about various places where it has also rained stones, supposedly, and Mrs. Dudley says it does in Revelations.
oh
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
get
yeah,
a little
yeah,
bit
yeah.
more of the Bible, Mrs. Dudley, that's somewhat sinister.
You didn't get the Olivia correcting her saying, "Well, fairy tale, who cares, yada yada" kind of attitude from before. You get this, "It does, doesn't it?" This kind of dreamy, "I agree with you, yeah,"
Hmm.
kind of thing. That was cool too. Yeah, yeah, good point.
Yeah, it was like she was seeking comfort from her. She was. And she was allowing
Oh
it.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it was a lot different dynamic than it was that time with her and Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Olivia goes to her study in air
Hmm.
quotes, or her reading room, and she's sipping her tea.
Well, she's like when she's walking, she's having a migraine or something. She's grabbing her head, and she walks past this guy painting that is clearly a ghost because he's like dressed in period clothes.
Yeah, and she walks by the clock guy.
Okay,
She
maybe
walks by
that's who
the
I'm
guy
thinking of. That's probably who I'm thinking of.
repairing the clock.
Yeah.
Which is from last week's episode
Right.
of the markings. Um, but yeah, she walks down. She goes into the kitchen. She's going to get her medicine for her migraine, of course. And the Luke and Shirley are arguing,
Hmm.
and they're arguing about giving Abigail Shirley's clothes. And you can obviously see that Mom is tuned out. I mean, Olivia even says something like, "No, she can't have your sister's clothes. You guys be good. Goodbye. I'm going upstairs."
Yeah, it's
So
like whatever.
obviously, obviously, Mom is not feeling too well. Happening. I thought it was interesting that it was Shirley,
Hmm.
of course, who's managing the house while Mom is sick, kind of subliminally, sort of thing there.
In charge.
Yeah. Oh yeah. In charge like always. Now, and the next scene, obviously a good scare scene, which I'm sure you appreciated.
Hmm.
Um, was interesting because of all of its firsts too. You know, Olivia. We follow Olivia. She goes back upstairs to her reading room. She opens the door, but it's not her reading room. It's the morgue
It's the
in
morgue
modern
from
times.
Shirley's basement.
Correct.
Yeah,
Shirley's funeral home, and she sees it empty at first, and then she glances again, and she sees Nell on the slab.
adult now.
Yeah, adult Nell.
Yeah,
So it's like she jumped forward in time,
yeah.
you know, sort of thing. So I had the question: Is this just opened up a lot of, you know, it's my science fiction side, but it opened up a lot of weirdness to me because I was going, okay, does the house exist outside of time, so it knew this would happen, so it's giving this to Olivia to frighten her? Or why did she have this flash forward vision of her kids being dead?
I can give
You
you
know?
my interpretation, which
Yeah.
is going to be kind of a
That's why we're here. It's
well,
our podcast. We can interpret it however we damn well please.
well, it's going to give away some keys, and I was going to hold them to the end, but
Oh, okay. Well, then
it's
maybe.
well, no, no. What it is one of the reasons, and this is not just in the novel Hill House. This is in other novels as well. Um, a particular like haunted house can take advantage of someone that is somewhat telekinetic or has clairvoyance. And my guess is that
Mm.
by having Olivia talk about potentially having stones rain when her father died because she was so upset, perhaps this is a prophetic dream or a waking prophetic dream that she is having in conjunction with the house's power and her own. And she is
Hmm.
literally seeing the future.
Interesting. Okay. That's a good interpretation. I like that, actually.
I won't use my other key, but that was the key I had. Is that in relation? It was the same with Eleanor in the book. They had to get Eleanor out of the house. She was the one that was most vulnerable to the house's power because of her own clairvoyance. And I feel like that's what they're using Olivia's character as.
Yeah. Well, she, you know, isn't it earlier in like episode like 5 or 6 when she's talking to Theo, young Theo, and she says, you know, she always had the sight as well,
Right.
kind of thing. She had feelings, everything else.
Hmm. So that's
So
my
yeah, that makes
theory.
sense. That's a great theory. Yeah, I'm just curious that he didn't pick like some random gravestone and you see that her kids are dead. Instead, he used actual, I want to say footage, but yeah, you know, he used the actual Nell in her funeral dress, Luke passed out, or you know, on the floor with a needle in his arm, that sort of thing, rather than it being some, you know, here Scrooge, here you lie in this grave, kind of
Well,
thing. You
yeah, I
know,
mean, you could. There's a million things out there that you could say it's a key to because if it's prophetic, Scrooge
right.
immediately comes to mind. Charles
And
Dickens,
but I do
Scrooge.
think I do like you. I think it was scarier to tell it this way. I
Hmm.
think him contemporizing this story makes it scarier as well, which means you know, going back to what we said earlier, it'll be curious to see what he does in season 2 if he tries to keep Turn of the Screw anywhere near a period piece. Hopefully not, but we'll see. I knew you would like the fact that Nellie has to reach over and unclip her own jaw with scissors in order
Oh
to say
yeah,
mommy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, what is she doing? And then you hear it snip, and if you look really
Yeah,
closely, you can see the wires still there in her
yeah,
mouth. Yeah, yeah, that
yeah.
was nasty.
He says, laughing.
Yeah.
Yes, it was nasty.
And then as soon as she gets it off, she's like, "Mommy, mommy, mommy."
Uh huh. Uh
Hmm.
huh. Really good. Anyway, then we get the jump scare because she kind of falls back. It's not a jump scare. I'm sorry. It's a cut. She falls back and she suddenly finds herself back in the reading room. So it's obviously a vision she has had. It establishes it. And then we cut and she's explaining the whole thing to Hugh, and
No, wait,
he's
wait,
basically
wait, wait, wait,
saying,
wait, wait. Doesn't
what,
she
what, what,
see
what,
Luke
what,
on the
what,
floor
what,
too?
what? Yeah, I said she saw Luke earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that part. I was just still
She got
concentrating on Nell. Because I thought the whole thing with Nell happens and then she sees Luke, and I was like, holy shit, there's a lot going on in this
it's
scene.
kind of back and forth because she goes and she sees Nell. Nell's on her right, and then she turns to her side and looks down and sees Luke. And as she's looking down at Luke, we see in the background Nellie sit up. It's that great Halloween shot from I want you to run to Mrs. So and so's house and da da da. And in the
Okay.
background, you see the shape sit up.
Okay, yeah, I had it out of order.
Okay, so then we come back and she's in the reading room. Then she's telling Hugh later, telling him the whole story. Naturally, Hugh, being the grounded realist that he is, goes, "So wow, that was a bad dream, honey. You know, sorry you had a dream." He never thinks she's clairvoyant or she sees or anything. He just says it's a bad dream. And then I thought it was interesting that he goes off on he goes from there into talking about his hand and how he just feels off. Both of them have felt off since they've been in this house.
Right.
And it was a really cool, just kind of basic scene between the one.
Mm-mm. It brings stability and it also sets up the story as far as her departure later, too,
Mm-hmm.
because they're both talking about how they don't feel quite right, but she's a little worse.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And we also get a time placement there. So obviously, by his hand, this
Hmm.
sequence
Yeah.
happens after the fan and after the mold.
Do you wonder how they write stuff like this? Do they have like just a giant dry erase board, with this timeline and all these lines going, this has got to happen here and
Yeah.
this has got to happen here because it's really confusing.
Yeah.
I mean, it plays wonderfully, but when I try to write that way, it is really confusing and it kind of pisses me off.
Well, anytime I'm writing, like I'm writing a play or writing anything and I'm trying to do that, I do the same thing. I put everything on little post-its
Hmm.
and put it up on the wall so I can move everything around.
Yeah.
And I remember, tangent story and sci-fi guy. I remember reading. I used to listen to one of my first ever, and I guess this was even before podcasts. This was like an audio that would play. But anyway, they recorded for a while the writers' rooms of Babylon 5, not Babylon 5, of Battlestar Galactica when it was remade, and Brandon Braga and all
All
the
right.
ex
Would
Star
that
Trek
be
people were
military
doing.
sci-fi?
Yes,
Okay. I thought it might
heavily
be.
military sci-fi.
Okay.
but but they were in one of the writing rooms. They had they do what they call break a story, which is they put everything out and they basically beat through the whole story, and everybody in the room comments on, does it make sense, is it working, they all contribute to the story. And this was for Brandon, so he's executive producer, so they're kind of pitching it to him. And they went through it and they said, scene A happens, scene B happens, scene C happens, and that's where it gets really kind of scary, and we have a lot of people in peril, and blah 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 blah. Then scene D happens, which is how they get out of that particular one. Then scene E, and he stopped him. He goes, "Okay, wait. So A happens, that's a setup. B gets a little bit more intense. C, they basically get attacked and they might die. D, we get out of it." And they said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Okay, put C in front of A." And they went, "What?"
Hmm.
He goes, "Put C in front of A." So we start the episode and they're about to die and they're in peril and everything else. And they go, "Okay, that's a great hook, but what do we do about A?" And he goes, "Then you just say 3 hours earlier and you go to A."
Hmm. Yeah.
And by doing that, they ended up, and it was genius to tell the story in that out of order way, but it also made it really compelling episode.
Yeah.
And they ended up, you find out later on, doing that a lot in other series, and especially in Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
You're getting this big life or death situation, and then it goes 2 days earlier. You
Hmm.
know.
Well, and he's been doing this the entire time during the series. We
Yes.
refer to it as non-linear, non-linear. timeline.
Right.
I love that. I love that kind of story.
Now, now the next scene, which is one of my favorites in the episode, because we actually do a blackout at the end of the scene between Hugh and Olivia, and that's very rare in this whole series that they actually do a blackout. As a matter of fact, I can't remember another time they do go to a blackout. And we fade back in, and now we're just creepily moving through the house.
And it's very Halloween-esque with the single
Yeah,
shots of different scary places in the house.
yes, very POV, very moving through the house, and then we move all the way up to Olivia in bed, and I was really expecting that whole thing with the pull the sheet off of her or whatever, but it didn't happen. But I got the impression, I'll ask you, I got the impression this was later that same night. This wasn't later on in time. This was the same night.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I guess maybe because they're connected together by that blackout or something. But I just got the feel that we are the same evening.
Well, I
kind of
think
thing.
most of the episode is within the same time frame, though, isn't it? So it would make sense for it to be later on that night.
I don't know. We'd have to go back. Did Hugh have his hand cut? He had his cut after the storm. So it would have to be linear in that respect.
Hmm.
In other words, if the first scene with the twins, and I want to freeze them, was, first week they arrived, and then the next scene with the storm was a couple of weeks later, and then the next scene with the hand was a couple of weeks
Okay,
later.
I see
Then
what
we
you're
are.
saying. Yeah. You may be right. Okay.
I just don't know how close those events were, kind of thing, because it was
Yeah.
after the mold and everything.
But it's kind of been chronological.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
do think that so far. But we get this scene introduces a new character that we've only saw a glimpse of in the last episode.
Hmm.
And I like the way they do that. Again, it's that she sees. So Olivia's in bed. She sees somebody at the doorway, a girl or a kid, something. Thinking about it right now as I'm saying it out loud, maybe it was Poppy's daughter, because she talks about her daughter later on. But maybe, I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was a girl. But she's just in the doorway and she runs away. And Olivia tries to wake Hugh up. He won't get up. She gets up. She goes to the door, looks around, doesn't see anybody in the hallways. But behind her, since she's at the doorway, is somebody leaning over her husband. And it turns out to be this girl dressed in like a 20s flapper
Right.
kind of thing.
Poppy.
So remind me too, because I haven't watched this recently, but does she say who she is, or do we just not know yet? Or are we supposed to infer?
She doesn't say just yet. I had to look her name up because I didn't want to forget it for the podcast. But I think
Yeah, but she doesn't. I don't think she says her name. She just says, "Hi, honey. Hi, darling." However she starts just talking to Olivia, and they just. My question was, okay, so I guess we're supposed to just infer who she is because we don't really know yet. But this whole scene then plays out because they go to the reading room and they have just like a bonding moment. It's just Olivia and Poppy, and I was going to ask you, so is this all in Olivia's mind, or is this really happening and that's really a ghost, or how did you interpret it?
I think it's really a ghost. But it's the same question we were asking when we watched The Shining in 1980. It's like, is this really happening, or is this in Jack's mind? He's
Oh, good. Oh, good key. Look at
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
The ghosts are manipulating her. In my opinion, because I'm a horror guy, I say they're ghosts because I like ghosts, and I think they're manipulating her.
Yeah, and I guess for the conceit of the story, yeah, they have to be.
Hmm.
This is Poppy is the manifestation of the house, let's say, and she's the closest one since she's another mother that she
Hmm.
can get to Olivia's weakness, which is this whole mother angle of protecting your cubs kind of thing. But how does he do it? The way we love. He has Poppy just go off on this rambling story about her kids.
Hmm.
And it's it's motherly, but then it's also insane, and then it's also scary, and it's also really creepy, and it's all together in this one monologue. I wrote down in my notes, okay, here's another one of those audition monologues.
Hmm.
Because she talks about her little girl, and she just kept screaming and screaming, and finally she stopped because when she died, and the boy who obviously, we infer obviously has polio or some kind of disease, and I'm assuming he's also the little boy we saw the night of the storms in the wheelchair, because she says he couldn't walk, and then he started banging on the walls, and then suddenly he stopped banging on the walls when he finally died, and all that. um, so I thought that was creepy, cool, neat, great performance by her.
It
um,
also could potentially explain the banging of the walls that Theo and Shirley heard that night. Or was it Theo and
oh
Shirley? Or
yeah,
was it Shirley and
yeah,
Mel?
yeah, no,
I can't remember who it was.
it was Charlie and Theo, because the same thing happened to them at the funeral home.
Hmm. Yes.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I think that's a good point.
Hmm.
That's a good one. Um, and she's the one that actually. Oh, okay, so then she tells her story, and Olivia says, "I've been having bad dreams too,"
Hmm.
and that's when we get the title of the episode.
It's a screaming Mimi.
Yeah, that's what she calls those dreams that are so scary they wake you up, or whatever.
Really
You wake up
intense.
screaming.
Yeah.
But then she, I guess, I'm trying to approach it from a horror standpoint. So I guess then she speaks for the house and basically challenges Olivia, because she basically says, "What would you do to protect your kids? And wouldn't you do anything to see that they don't get lost in the dark or get out there, or whatever?" She even I think I remember she even whispers to her or says something to her about, "I can tell you how to protect your kids," but we don't know what she says.
Right. She whispers.
Right?
Hmm.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Doesn't she whisper it
Yeah.
into her ear?
Yeah, I think so. I was trying to remember, but I think so.
Have you reached the point where they're actually looking at the kids now and they toggle back and forth, and all of a sudden she's an old, ugly ghost, and then all of a sudden she's young again?
Oh no, I forgot about that. That's
Yeah.
right.
There's like with different cuts, she doesn't appear the same. She appears nice in one shot, like it's, dressed like a flapper, and then she's like all moldy, like an old corpse flapper. Yeah, it's creepy.
Oh, okay.
It's very another shining key. It's very like the woman in the tub in The Shining,
Mm-hmm.
going from gorgeous to a corpse. Yeah.
Right, 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 right. I'd forgotten about that, but that's true. And it's just showing that malevolence of the house.
Hmm.
That it's Olivia seeing things that the house is making her see,
I
kind
have
of
a
thing, which
question.
is good. Yeah.
What are elephants' eyebrows?
Elephant eyebrows.
That's how Poppy describes the kids as being cute. She says, "Aren't they the elephant's eyebrows?" or something like that. I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, okay.
I've
Well,
never
maybe
heard
it's
that.
an. I have not heard that. Maybe it's another flapper thing, like cat's pajamas or something.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean? Maybe it's one of those like slang idioms
yeah,
from the 20s.
yeah. I guess so because I've never heard of it.
Elephant, elephant. I'll have to look that one up. Elephant eyebrows. I didn't
Hmm.
catch that one. I know we cut from that to a hard cut, and we're now the night that Olivia is sitting on Hugh's chest with a screwdriver at his throat.
Right. Before we go there, I have the last lines I have written were, "What would you do, Olivia?" And she says, "I would wake them up," which is
Okay.
it's kind of her committing to what's going to happen.
But wake them up, we later find out, but wake them up means I'm going to kill them,
Yes, it's a metaphor for
right?
I'm going to kill them and freeze them forever.
Because reality is a dream, and I want to wake them up so that the dream won't hurt them,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what they're trying to say with her motivation. Okay.
Hmm. I just like that line.
Yeah,
I'd wake them up.
I do too. I agree. I like that one. But we cut to that to literally Hugh doing the you have a knife at my throat.
It
What?
was a screwdriver.
Uh,
Screwdriver.
yeah, screwdriver. And it's that you're doing the like we said earlier. It's the other point of view from Hugh's episode when he suddenly wakes up and she's sitting on him. This is where she was when before she did it. So it's her perspective.
Right.
Um,
Which plays into your Castle Rock theory that you mentioned earlier. All of a sudden, it's like,
right.
oh, that's where she was when this happened.
Right. And I actually put in my notes here, duh, David. So everything is from Olivia's POV. So that's when it finally hit me that this whole episode is Olivia's episode.
Yeah.
But we basically get a menage, haha. We basically get a montage then of like that the blueprints, the it's time for you to take a rest or a break or whatever, and it's several scenes all just really fast.
Hey, did you notice on those blueprints that it looks like there's just millions of rooms in that house?
Yeah, because that's the one that she's written over with the Forever House.
Okay.
She's put the Forever House like all over the blueprint,
It's,
everywhere, over and over and over again.
yeah. It's just like millions of little jigsaw puzzle pieces. I was like, whoa, are
Yeah, it
those
looks like a
all
jigsaw
rooms?
puzzle. Then I've got, okay, cool scene. So now we cut, and we're at the scene that I think I remember they used as a teaser for this series. But it's the scene with Olivia and little Nell and little Luke, and they're both asking her, and it's almost like I got the impression, and I may be wrong, you can correct me, but I got the impression that this wasn't really Luke and Nellie talking. This was the house talking to Luke and Nellie. That was when Nellie's doing the whole thing about what would you do if I had a scary dream?
Yes. Oh my
What would
God.
you do if I,
Yes, I know what you're
you
talking
know,
about now.
and it's such mature writing for such it doesn't read like the rest of their scenes have read. You know what I
No,
mean?
no, no,
It
no.
feels different, and that's what makes it so creepy.
Hmm.
And then Luke goes on to and what would you do if I was so sad I took poison and I
Hmm.
poisoned my body and for years and years and years and it killed me and da 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 da. It's just
Hmm.
um, and I wrote all these lines in here about you sent us away into the dark.
That's
Um,
it's right out of the book again. It's that same line, into the night, into the dark.
yeah,
I love
in
how
the
they keep
night,
coming
in
back
the
to that.
dark,
Yeah,
which is also the same thing Mrs. Dudley said in like the first episode. She
exactly,
says, "I don't stay
exactly.
here at
Hmm.
night." I've got another line. The dark gets us a piece at a time, which I thought was great.
Hmm.
And Nellie even says, "What if I die and I end up on a silver table?"
Hmm.
So I got the definite impression that this was the house again talking to Olivia.
Right.
It's a really creepy scene. It's done really well. She again does that mother thing of, well, I would wake you up. Of course, I'll always take care of you. I'll always protect you, blah, blah, blah. And we cut, and it's Steve from 3 episodes ago or whatever, seeing her in the room talking to nobody.
Yeah, staring at two empty
And,
beds. Yeah, yeah.
right, right.
It's like, ooh,
And,
oh girl,
yeah.
something's not
And
right.
so I thought that was really, yeah. And you see, okay, mommy's not feeling too good. I can tell. Um, but the twins aren't there. She's not really seeing them. It's not nighttime or whatever. And that's when she goes away, and that's when Steve decides he's going to do the vanity for her.
Right. So that makes a little more sense to me now because I was asking you the other day, why was he making her a vanity? It just seemed like kind of out of the blue. But now maybe he's thinking, that's something that'll help ground her and make her happy or whatever, you know.
Yeah, cheer her up,
Yeah.
whatever. I think he even says that to her later on when he gives it to her. He says something like, I just thought you needed some cheering up or something like that.
Hmm.
I just thought in my head of the adult Steve saying, because mental illness, that's why.
Yeah, that's
It's
why.
because you're crazy,
It's in our
Mom. I'm
family.
making it's in our family. Anyway,
Yeah, I'm a little over that.
um,
That's some writing I'm over. I don't need to hear that again.
yeah, yeah. We don't need to hear. Yeah, we know. We got it, Steve. Got the first 5 times. Then we cut, and we've got a really cool scene, and I've got a key out of this one I want to talk about. Olivia is in the for lack of a better word, the sculpture room.
The angel, is it the angel room?
Well, there's all these. There's all this. It's behind the staircase on the main floor, and it's where all the sculptures are. So there's a big sculpture in front of the window with a swan, and then there's another sculpture on the side. There's Poseidon over on the right. I mean, there's just all these sculptures
I know. I
everywhere.
have a question mark.
Um,
I mean, a question that just says, "What are all these statues?" I mean, there's so many in that one
well,
little area, and they're all really large
hold
and
that very thought because
grandiose.
I have a theory about one of those,
Okay.
but anyway, Mrs. Dudley sits down and they have another great conversation, and and it's again two great actresses right with each other, great writing.
Hmm.
But I had the question I wanted to ask you: is this really Mrs. Dudley, or is this the house talking through Mrs. Dudley?
I think it's really Mrs. Dudley.
Okay,
I think
I
she
challenge
knows.
that just because the lines I've written down, she has stuff like, because the world out there has teeth, and if you're not careful, it'll gobble up your kids.
Hmm.
And that's why I keep my kid, she's not allowed to enter this house and da 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 da. I just thought that was very, very interesting dialogue. It makes sense. I can see both sides. I can see yeah, that's Mrs. Dudley and her puritanical kind of overprotection of her child, and she's seen bad things in that house. Because she tells the whole story about how she wasn't going to, she says something like, I wasn't even going to come here when you guys came, but my husband talked me into it because he said it was a family, or whatever. So I think she sees herself as almost protecting her a little bit.
Hmm.
But she also, to your point, it is Mrs. Dudley, she also, I think, tells her to go away. She says she should leave
Yeah.
early,
She
like
says, my
quickly or
favorite
whatever.
thing she says um, is that not only that the world has teeth, but that it's hungry, it's stupid, and it eats mindlessly, which
Oh, yeah.
is the house is alluded that way as well. As a matter of fact, haunted houses have been alluded that way or have been described that way in lots of different literature and movies. It's just like
As
these
eating
mind,
things.
kind of like a shark of the paranormal world. They just kind of
Mm, mm.
exist and eat. They're not very bright.
Yeah, that reminds me. Wait, that reminds me of it. Isn't in the drawing of the three? Isn't the house? There's a house in there that's scary. That's like that, and they even have visions of it eating them. I think I remember that in Gunslinger somewhere. It may
It
not be drawing of the three.
it's in
Or maybe after.
I think it's in the Wastelands. I think it's in the Wastelands,
Okay.
and then later in Black House later too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but yeah, you're right.
So
There
yeah,
is.
those are good keys. Yeah, I think they do eat. Yeah, voracious house and Hugh says it. In last week's episode, he said it about because I think the house is we're its last meal and or the meal it never got or never
Yeah.
finished or whatever.
Is that last week?
He makes that. Yeah, that's when he and Steve are running to find Luke
Oh, okay.
driving.
Okay. I was for some reason I was thinking it may have been in this one, but never mind. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, I guess this is a Mrs. Dudley line because I wrote down I didn't want to watch anyone else get fed upon. So I'm assuming she's talking about the house and why she came to babysit or what or caretake or
Hmm.
whatever. Um, but so she says, "Okay, I'll pray for you. I'll go upstairs or whatever." She's leaving because she has the paint for Steve. Basically, is why she was even there. But it's the first time we get to see what really Olivia's been looking at in front of her, and it's that huge statue
Hmm.
that's behind the stairs that is of, and I think maybe I'm reading way too much into this,
I doubt
but
it.
I really don't think so. I think it's a statue version of Cezanne's painting of Leda and the Swan, and Leda and the Swan has such implications literarily to this story because Leda and the swan was basically Zeus, who took the form of a swan to seduce Leda and make her have her children. And her children ended up being Helen of Troy, that caused the Trojan War,
Hmm.
and Clytemnestra, who killed Agamemnon. And so both of her children were damned almost because of this union kind of thing. Um, and it became a big poem by Yeats, and it was a big deal. But that goes back to like Greek mythology, and I'm just wondering if they put that much into it, or if I'm just reading into it and they just basically said, "Oh, that's a good statue of a swan. Let's put that in there,"
Nah,
and I'm just reading that into
I
it.
can't think that's accidental. And you get on with your big ancient lit badass self. that that was awesome. I mean,
Well, it's
I
interesting.
know
I
that stuff, but I didn't recognize the statue, and I was like,
Well, it came up to
that's
me, and it was obviously prophetic. It was supposed to hit me because about a week or so ago, I watched the new science fiction movie called Io,
hmm
and in it, one of the characters actually looks at the Cezanne painting and
oh,
talks about Leda and the Swan.
aha,
So it just really hit me because I was going, okay, that makes perfect sense. It reminds me of that, and because it's almost the same pose. The swan's
right.
on the left, and looking down at her and everything. So maybe
Yeah, I don't know if I would
I
have
don't know.
admitted that. I would have just pretended like you knew all that.
All right, we'll edit that part out. No, but no, because it just I just thought that was kind of cool and
Yeah,
prophetic.
that is cool because I was curious as to. I mean, there's too many statues in that room, and I've always wondered. I mean, there's always statues, but there's a collection of them in that room, and I was like, they're got to be there for a reason. And I think you hit it.
Yeah, and they're going like through like three of the rooms. They stretch out and everything, and it made me want to go back and now look at other rooms because I wonder if all of the statues are gods. Because I also noticed that over in the corner is a male statue holding a trident. So I'm
Mhm.
assuming it's Poseidon or
Yeah, I
Neptune.
did see
So
that one.
maybe they're all Greek
Well,
or
one of them's an
Roman
angel.
kind of
One of
thing.
them's
That might be
clearly an
cool.
angel. That
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
think.
it might be interesting to see if they are, based on anything, literally, Greek mythology
Yeah,
wise.
yeah. I would like to know. I'd like to ask Mike Flanagan personally. What are these statues?
Let's give, let's give him a call
Yeah, make
right
me a
now. Let's do
list.
it. Let's see. Then I've got the vanity scene. So we go to the vanity.
And that's great because you find out why she smashed it because she sees the corpse of Nell and Luke in the reflection behind her. And you don't
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
that the first time. You're like, why the hell did she do that? Now you know why.
Yep. Yeah. 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 That was cool,
hmm
and I like the fact that again we're sticking with mostly a linear story. She's already decided she's leaving. Mrs. Dudley says you should leave sooner.
hmm
She gets she's taking the paint up to Steve. He paints the vanity. He sees the mold on it. She sees it, sees the kids, hits it, and then it cuts, and she and Hugh is bandaging her up where she hit it.
Yeah, now she's got a wounded hand.
Yeah, yeah. And she gives again another great story, and I was going, okay, this is another good monologue for audition piece because she talks about he says again something about how we're different now, or we felt jittery, or we're all stressed out since we've been here with the mold and everything else. And she does that. She gives this nice soliloquy about she wasn't at first. She was happy and sad and scared and all gives all these things that are all good and along. And she says, but now I don't feel anything. The only thing I feel is scared. And I thought that was really cool because she compares them to like colors or something or seasons. She has a comparison in there.
Yeah,
And she says, like, I used to see all the colors of the rainbow and now I only see black
yeah.
or something. It was
Now
really
she says
cool.
all the
Um,
colors are gone. And
okay, okay.
and I love that because I don't remember a reference to colors at all. I was like, wow, she used the word colors as a description for for all those feelings.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, that was it.
hmm
So, yeah. It's like the elephant's eyebrows. It just hits you from the blue. You don't
Well,
get it.
yeah, but she wasn't
Um,
using it as a, like you said, an idiom or whatever. She was just using it as
right.
metaphorically, I guess would be the word that I overuse. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, a great scene with the two of them. They decide, oh yeah, you got to leave early.
Luke asked if Abigail can spend the night.
Oh yeah, because then they have the goodbye scene.
I have a lot of questions about Abigail, and I hope that you can help me answer them. So
Well, I certainly shall try.
yeah, we'll get
Um,
to it in a minute.
uh,
But yeah,
uh, and I did catch a gaff, and I don't know if it's a gaff, but I think it is because I can't read anything intentional into it. She basically says goodbye to the family, and she has a big wheelie bag with her purse on top of it, and she's wheeling it out the doors. And then it cuts to outside, and the cab is there, and the guy's there, the cab driver's there, and she walks out of the house, and she has a little purse, like a little briefcasey kind of thing. And I thought, where did her bag go? They made a big deal because the camera's really low. I mean, like below her waist. The bag is like in the foreground. And I'm going, okay, there's a point you're wanting me to see this bag, but now the bag's not there. So is this a different day? And it can't be. She's wearing the same dress.
you,
But so I really think it was a
I think
continuity
it's
error. I really
continuity.
think it
I
was a
think that's why
mistake.
I'm laughing. You caught one I didn't catch. That's funny.
Yeah, I thought, and I took a note about it. I said, no, there's no way she has a different suitcase.
Yeah, nah.
And then we get the lying scene. I call it the lying scene because we finally find out the relevance of the hotel and why the hotel is another part of this haunted area sort of thing.
Hmm.
Because Olivia didn't go to Janet's; she went to the hotel,
Hmm.
but she calls Hugh and lies to him. And that was really that's the whole scene. I was going. I so again, it's a parental thing. I equated to it because he can barely hear her because the kids are screaming. They won't be quiet and da 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 da, and so he's barely focused on what she's saying. But she's lying to him with almost everything she says.
Right.
Something like because she says something about like we're both having a drink or Janet says hi or whatever, and none of it's real. None of it's. She's really sitting in a hotel room.
Hmm. You
So my
missed
question.
one.
Oh, you go ahead.
I was gonna say right before you went to that scene where they're in the kitchen and he's on the phone with her. He's in the basement and sees the mold again, and they do a slow pan or whatever to a bottle of rat poison, and it's foreshadowing.
Oh, okay.
It's on the floor in the foreground as he's looking at the wall in the
Yeah.
background.
There you go.
Yeah,
Visual foreshadow, very like
right.
on the nose there. By the way, you better notice this. It's
Yeah,
going to be used later.
and then okay, so after that scene, we get back to the house.
Well,
It's oh, I'm sorry.
wait
Go
before
ahead.
we jump back. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So, Olivia doing all this is this Olivia? The house has got me thinking I need to save my kids, so I have a plan, or is Olivia literally possessed by the house?
I think she's definitely
So
possessed
is
by the house, and I think as a result, she's acting out her plan. So I think it's
I guess
both.
by what I mean by that is this like a Poppy talking through Olivia or the house talking through Olivia rather than Olivia herself? I guess is my question.
Um,
Because it kind of struck me as it could be either. I think I would feel more sorry for her if it's her and she's not just like a meat puppet to the house kind of thing. You know what I mean? But I was curious because this is. I mean, she's lying to the light of her life, her grounding, her family, da 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 da, and it's intentional.
mhm.
She didn't go, she didn't travel, and she's coming back to the house with a plan.
Yeah,
So I think I feel more sorry for her if it's because she's quote so to speak, delusional. She literally believes that she's in a dream and she has to wake her kids up from it
mental
rather
illness.
than
No.
mental illness. It's in our family. Rather than rather than it being she's just being manipulated by the house. You know what I mean?
I think the house is has gradually um, encompassed her. I think that little things like Poppy whispering in her ears and the little kids saying, what if I took poison and would you wake me up? I think all of that is little pieces that the house is using to to get her. And then by the
Okay.
time she leaves, she's pretty much already possessed by the house. it is sad if it's her as a human thinking the only way she can save her kids is to kill them. But
Well, see, I guess it's my interpretation because to me, possession is like The Exorcist.
hmm
That's not Reagan, the little girl there. That's a demon using her just as a physical body.
hmm
So to me, that's possession.
right.
And so, and I guess I go back against my original question. I don't think she is possessed here.
Yeah, and
I think she is
we may need a different
doing
word.
this because because the house has manipulated her.
Right.
And because she's seeing things that maybe aren't real, but to her they are, I think. So she's being manipulated, but she's not possessed.
Right. And you know what? We were using the wrong word. Manipulate is probably a better word. And also, when we've talked in the past about the good Olivia and the bad Olivia, I think the
Mm-hmm.
bad Olivia really didn't exist until Olivia died and is a ghost in that house.
Agreed. Agreed. I
So,
totally agree with
so
that.
yeah, right now she is a manipulated woman with mental illness. No, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think I do. I think the house, once you are dead on the premises and if they have you, they can turn you into an evil force.
They turn you
I
into
think
one of their
the house
pawns to
does. The
manipulate
house.
someone else.
Yes. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yes. Although Nell is an argument that it's not always going to work because Nell is actually trying to protect them. But that's another
Right. Nell
story.
fights against him.
Yeah.
True. Okay. So you said okay. Once we get back to the house, because now we have mom looking at Hugh who's asleep on the couch downstairs,
Creepy.
and then she goes to the kitchen,
Yeah.
and yeah, creepy.
Just staring at him.
And Shirley wakes up,
hmm
goes down to say and catches mom, making a tea party
hmm
kind of thing. It's very interesting because Olivia no longer looks golden. So from the very beginning of this series, every time you see Olivia, I almost call it like the Star Trek, Fenderman
A
filter.
Maddie
It has
Hayes
that
filter.
a Maddie Hayes filter
Yeah.
from Moonlighting. Very true.
Yeah.
So there you go. So she's always very beautiful, very dewy eyed, kind of thing. Even during the funeral scene outside, there's all this golden kind of color. But from the minute she comes back, from the minute she's in the hotel room, actually on the phone,
hmm
she's very gray and very gaunt looking and very pale. And there's no flattering lighting and all of that. So I thought that was very interesting for him from a cinematic standpoint. Very cold, blues, all that. I don't know where this comes from, but kittens need their mommies. Then they don't.
I don't know where that comes from either.
Kittens need their. Oh! She's. She,
I don't know why that
she
struck me as funny,
says.
but it's just funny.
Well, I guess it's for those people who would go, okay, if she plans on killing the whole family, why didn't she just kill Shirley right there? Say, here, honey, have a sip. Would you like some tea?
I think
Because you're
she
hungry.
wants to freeze the
You know,
young ones because they're not older yet.
right.
She
And
she said something earlier on about how I wish we could keep them this age.
yeah, because they grow up and they're different,
Right,
kind
right.
of thing. And that's what she's saying. She's saying kittens need their mommies, but then they don't. So she's referring Shirley and Theo don't need their mommies anymore.
Right.
But the two little ones do.
hmm
'Cause- yeah. And I think I remember there's a couple of times even after this in later scenes in this episode where she calls them kittens. Like during the tea party or something, she
Okay.
calls them kittens.
I didn't catch that.
So that's a phrase.
Oh.
Um,
Yeah, I want to turn it into a catchphrase. That's just too funny. Kittens need their mummies.
yeah. Kittens need their mommies. Ooh, see, have a zombie say that and it'd be scary. Anyway, so then she goes upstairs with her tea party and she meets for the first time. We all meet, I guess, for the first time, really.
Abigail.
Abigail. If ever there was a ghost name, that's a ghost name.
Okay.
She might as well be called Gertrude or Myrtle.
Okay.
What?
Is Abigail already a ghost, or is she real?
She's real.
She is real.
I think.
Then
Yes.
why do they refer to her as Luke's imaginary friend?
Because no one else has seen her but Luke. Because she doesn't come on the grounds of the house because she's scared. Her mom's told her never to do that.
Okay.
Remember Mrs. Dudley said, "My daughter is never allowed over here, even during the day."
Right.
So, and they make a point of Luke saying something about like she's sneaky like me. She snuck out of the house. Da da da. So I think again, writing wise, I think that's why he gave Mrs. Dudley a couple scenes in this was to connect it back to her daughter.
Because I've gone back and forth on it. I'm like, is she real or is she already a ghost? Because Annabeth Gish looks a little too old to have a kid that young. And I knew they lost another kid, and he talks about it when has his soliloquy,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Dudley. And then,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes sense to me almost either way, except for the fact that Mrs. Dudley does blatantly say she's not allowed in the house. And if that's the case,
Right.
then why did
Especially
Olivia
at
say,
night.
sure, she can come over and spend the night with Luke?
Because well, I don't know. That was during the leaving scene too, so maybe she was again not really listening.
Right, she probably
Totally. Like,
wasn't.
sure, yeah,
Okay.
whatever, honey.
I just wanted to make sure that Abigail
Go
is
play with the
real.
knives in the kitchen. Well, and my reasons for that, I'll tell you why. Because in the series, the only time we've seen Abigail before, literally seen her visually, was when Luke saw her at the edge of the woods. He painted a drawing of her, which Steve saw, and he talks about her.
And I think
But
he
he
has a
never
scene
really,
with her in the grass too, or something. Like they're sitting there or something.
yes. And yeah, pull back. So those are the only two times we've ever seen him,
Okay.
and no other characters were ever around.
Okay.
So it was just Luke. And also, jumping ahead a little bit in this episode, I think before she does her ultimate act kind of thing, Olivia literally sees Abigail and sees that she's dead. And that she killed her. I think there's guilt there.
Okay. I just wanted to know what the fuck was up with Abigail. It was bothering me. So I think you've clarified it, even though I do think Lillian Gish, I mean, not Lillian, Lillian Gish. I mean, Annabeth Gish is a little old to be having a child that young. Lillian Gish is really too old to be having a child that young.
Well, they play her pseudo young a little bit, so it's not. I mean, I can see that a little, possibly. It never bothered me
Okay.
that would be her daughter, because to me she looks a little young for the husband too. He looks a little bit older and burly and all that, I guess. But anyway, they go to have a tea party, and it's in the red room, which is open, and Nellie even says something about like you found the key or whatever,
Oh, her.
or you opened
That's
it.
the best line in the whole stinking episode when she says,
What?
"We are the key."
Oh, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. She says, yeah, we are the key. Yeah, okay. And that's, if we're talking keys, literally, haha,
Hmm.
that's a key for next week's episode, too, because we've seen it before already, but we're going to see it again. But you know what I mean. That's a key to the finale, too.
Hmm.
It's kind of like foreshadow. But Shirley's the one that pseudo saves the day because she goes and wakes Dad up and says, I thought Mom was at Aunt Janet's. Well, she's not. She's roaming around the kitchen with rat poison and a tea party or what. No, she says Mom's acting weird or whatever. And then we get the whole last night. So now we realize this is the last night. This is the last night they were in the house. The thing that we opened up the whole season with 9 episodes ago. And I like the fact that we keep seeing scenes, but hearing audio from other scenes that we saw before. Like, we actually see Abigail in the window and we hear Luke saying, I see Abigail in the window.
Yeah.
And I think I remember it right. We see Hugh talking to Steve about the whole, we're going to run, blah, 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 blah. But we know now who's on the outside of the door. And it's really Olivia and Poppy and everything. And, we hear all the scenes about go wait with your brother in the car and da 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 while we're upstairs with
Olivia on the floor. Yeah.
Olivia. Yeah. I love the way he did that. It's kind of like counter. We know this. We know the progression, and now we're seeing it again from her point of view, sort of
Yeah, I
thing.
mean, imagine if you went
Uh,
back and edited it in a split screen, like Brian De Palma.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
do a Brian. Oh, you beat me to it. Yeah, do a Brian De Palma on that.
yeah.
But I did have some. So I did have some questions in all this.
Okay.
So we go to a handheld camera. Hugh finds out that the twins aren't in their beds. He goes running down the
Mm-hmm.
hallway. We chase him. He sees the red room is open. This is the first time Hugh has been in the red
Mm-hmm.
room. And he runs in and knocks off the tea party because he sees Abigail dying there and grabs the kids and says, "Get out, go to the car," or whatever, runs away with them.
I love how the room is like black with mold.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
really
It's
creepy.
molds going up the walls or
It's
whatever.
like the
Yeah.
nexus of the house, like the most fetid part of the house or whatever. It's 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 nice.
So I have these questions that I wrote when I wrote it, which are okay, so Hugh literally does see ghosts because he sees them in the hallway
Yeah,
two different
they're
times.
everywhere now.
So this is, and essentially this is the first time he's seen
Yeah.
ghosts,
And we missed this earlier, but you
right?
remember when we said something about the clock worker that she passed?
Yeah.
There's also another scene where she's walking through the house later, and there are like people there that are working, I guess, to remove the mold. But if you look closely, some of them are ghosts too. They're like walking around in different period costumes and stuff.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
notice
I mean,
that,
it's
but
like
that's a
all of a
good
sudden all the
catch.
ghosts are coming
Yeah.
out. It's party time.
Oh yeah, because Olivia's
Yeah.
breaking. She's
and
cracking.
and now he's seeing them. This is another big key for me.
Okay, so this kind of goes to it. So, do you think? Okay, so Abigail has just died,
Hmm.
and young Luke has sees Abigail in the window. That's not the real Abigail. That's obviously an Abigail ghost. So now, do you think all the ghosts come out when somebody dies? When they get a new addition to the family, they all just start creeping around or showing up or whatever?
Well, I hadn't thought about it, but it's really cool.
I thought that might be a cool. I thought that might be a cool thought. Is it
Yeah,
kind of activates all the
yeah. It's like
house?
welcome to
You
the
know, they have it
fraternity.
becomes a
Welcome aboard.
right. And this whole last sequence, it reminds me of The Shining. I mean,
Oh
that's the
yeah,
key I got out of it because it really is. It's this whole running down the corridors and seeing ghosts at the end of it and turning the other way and there's
exactly.
another ghost and just
Yeah, it's a big
oh
key. This whole episode has big shining moments in it. Even back to what I was saying with Poppy flipping back and forth from being young to old. And then later on in the episode,
right.
when it's starting, you can feel the climax coming. And just like in Kubrick's The Shining, as everything's building to that climax at the end, there's just more and more of them everywhere you turn. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Now I did have a weird part that threw me, and maybe you can help me see it.
Hmm.
If I helped you with Abigail, maybe you can help me with this. So Olivia is realizes that Hugh has taken the kids, and Poppy starts talking in her ear again, saying stuff like, he's gonna feed him or what he's gonna kill him. He's taking him to the dark. He's taking him away
And
from
it's really
you.
fast.
Whatever.
Yeah,
She
she's
starts.
just saying stuff
Yeah,
over
she
and
starts
over.
saying all this stuff, and the old lady ghost, Clara or whomever, the one from the trumpet, the sound, that sleeps in the bed, says she's a liar and don't trust her and don't listen to her because she
Okay.
lies. Isn't that like totally counterproductive to what the house wants to
Not
do?
if you consider that Nell is doing the same thing.
Oh, got me. Yes, I hadn't thought of
Yeah.
that.
See, they're not all
So there
bad.
are those. There are those that don't agree with what the house is doing.
Right.
Oh, okay,
Hmm.
okay, okay. See, I didn't think of that at all. I thought, well, why is the house fighting with itself? Seems like she would be going, she's right, Gary. You better go get him now, or whatever. Okay, that makes
Hmm.
sense. That makes sense. And my next question then is, okay, so we see that. We start seeing all the ghosts. We see Abigail as a ghost, and a woman reaches down and takes her hand. Who's that? Who's that woman? Are we supposed to know?
Say that
Did
again.
it freak me out that I didn't know? We see Abigail in the window looking down at Luke in the
Okay.
car. And it's obviously Abigail the ghost.
Right.
But she looks up to her right, and a hand reaches down, and she takes the hand, and it looks like a mother, a woman, or whatever. Is that like supposed to be young Mrs. Dudley? It can't be because Mrs. Dudley's still
I
alive.
don't remember this.
Is it like just
I,
just a friendly ghost who says, "Hey, I've got a new daughter now. I'll play with her"? It was a big question to me because I was going, okay, I know we're not supposed to know who all these ghosts are. The clock guy, yeah, he has a purpose, but we're not supposed to know. But like you said, the workers in different garb, we don't have to know who they are. But if they interact with a character we know, seems like we should know them. Like we know that the guy with the stick and the cane and the bowler, that's
that's
William.
William Hill.
That's the
I just discovered something on IMDb. You can look at the full cast, and all the ghosts are at the bottom because they don't have lines. And her name's not Clara; it's
ah
older Hazel. Her name must have been Hazel.
Hazel.
Um,
Oh yeah, because Clara is Mrs. Dudley's name.
okay.
That's why she was calling her. She was calling Mrs. Dudley because she was there when she
Uh-huh.
died.
Uh-huh.
That makes
But
sense.
I'm also looking at the
Okay, but
cast,
anyway,
and I don't see anybody else that could possibly be that woman you're talking about. So I'm not really sure.
okay. I may have to look at the episode again and find
You
it
know,
and
I
show it
may
to you
have to
because
too, because I don't
she does.
remember
I mean,
this.
she leads her down the hallway, and I was going, "Who is this? Are we supposed to know who this lady is?" I don't
I
know.
thought it. I
Um,
remember Poppy pops up a little bit.
because in the meanwhile, Olivia is over there, and she's out on the spiral staircase talking to Poppy.
Hmm.
Which begs the question again. I'm there for that one. Did Olivia jump, or was she pushed?
You know, it's implied that she stepped and just or jumped. It was really weird because at one point she's standing there, and then after another cut, you see a rope, and you're like, "Oh, she's gonna hang herself." And then you see Poppy reach out like she's gonna push her, but you clearly see her
Mm-hmm.
step away before Poppy's hand reaches her. So it's
Correct.
so
Correct.
maybe if Poppy had a pushed her, her ghost would have been an innocent, nice ghost. But since she took her own life, maybe that's why she's not innocent. Maybe she's mean. I don't know. That's just me projecting.
It was done the same way as Nell. At first, she's just standing there
Hmm.
talking, and then Poppy's talking to her, and then we cut, and she's obviously on the other side of the
Right.
rail, holding on
Right.
to it. And she says, "I want to wake up. I want to wake up." And Poppy says something like, "Well, go ahead, sweetie, or sugar, or go ahead and wake up." And reaches out. And as she's reaching out, Olivia falls. So did she force her, or did she, whatever? Um, I think it goes along with what we're talking
Hmm.
about that they, the house creates such a delusion in you that you do things you wouldn't normally
Hmm.
do. It's not that you're possessed. It's not that
You're
they can
manipulated.
physically push you.
Yeah.
Right. Um, but it kind of defies their logic too, because there are other times like they pull the sheets off beds, and so they can obviously manipulate stuff. So it seems like they would just push you. But I don't know. That's just me being persnickety.
Yeah, I see what
Um,
you're saying. You're saying they can actually do physical things. Um,
yeah, we've seen it do it in other episodes, so why wouldn't
I
they?
think the house
You know.
was egotistical and wanted to see if it could make her jump.
No, that's true
You
too.
know, and then if she didn't, they'd push her. Ha
Yeah.
ha!
Yeah, I've got a backup plan in case that one doesn't work.
Oh,
So then we get to the essentially the coda or the epilogue of the episode, which is again roaming through the house, all kind of creepy and spooky like. But then the big doors open, and we're obviously all the way back to the beginning. And this is the first time they arrived, and um, they're there. It's all of them running into the house for the first time. So it's all of them running in for the first time and doing it's a scene we've seen before, again, but again, not from Olivia's point of view. And it's all about, whose room do you get? And, oh, it's a big house and all of that. We're going to be here all summer. We're going to be rich or whatever. And I just wrote down the last line that I like.
I was gonna say I've left out some lines. I'm gonna go back though, but go ahead.
Okay, cool. But Olivia says, "You guys go on without me,"
Yeah. Oh God, it's just
and
heartbreaking.
and again, she's all yeah, and she's all glowy and smiley and golden, and everything's back to that normal lighting and all of
Hmm.
that. So I thought that was really a good choice by him directing
Yeah.
wise.
Yeah. That's the last line. That's just a gut punch. Um.
Oh yeah.
The reason I got lost is I we went ahead a little bit fast. I still back with the key with all the ghosts and being the shining, very shining esque. I actually wrote the ghosts are telling Jack in parentheses what to do, which is, and
Oh,
that's just
okay.
that was my thought at the time when I wrote it. And then Hugh in the hall with Steven, Olivia in window, and then I just say fucking Poppy. I don't know why. I guess she pissed me off. Oh, she's whispering in her ear, doing all that fast stuff, and she's like teeth, tear and chew, eaten alive, da da da. I mean, she's just using all this like nasty stuff that she's just hammering into Olivia's head. Um, and then we see Abigail's ghost, and she says, "Are you awake now?"
Oh yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
ooh, she's dead. And it's that whole metaphor the whole time, about waking them up. The spiral staircase, she mentions again that it's just a dream, a screaming Mimi. That's what Poppy says to her before she falls. And as she's standing there, she says, I want to wake up so badly. And it's like, ooh, it could mean either way. I either want to wake up from this or I
Yeah.
want to die, or it could be both.
Yeah, or it's the meta. You know, what we're playing off of is the house is saying, in order to wake up, you have
Yeah,
to die.
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's
So,
cool. That's
and
cool.
then we go to what you were saying, where they, at the very end, when they flash back and it's like their first day in the house, and she has that final line of, "You guys go on without me." It's just, it's definitely in my top three favorite episodes. It's a fantastic episode.
It is. I agree with you. I think even though we've asked a lot of I guess over analytical questions during this episode, I do like the fact that it flows so well. It is so well written. Great
And
performances.
it's a reveal episode, so you get a lot of answers too. Yeah.
Right, and it sets, like you said earlier, it does. It sets you up for the
Hmm.
finale, which is next week. Which is I guess it's the return to the house for
Hmm.
everyone kind of thing, and what happens then.
It's one of those shows where it's done right. So many shows try to hook you and keep you going by, like Lost that went on for 8 years and you don't know what the hell's going on. But in this one, you know what's going on, and when you don't, you find out pretty quickly, and you put it all together.
Yeah,
And that's
or like you were
the
saying,
way that a series should be.
yeah, yeah, and like you were saying, it's like the passage that is padding everything so much
Yeah,
that you're losing scenes and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
makes
don't
sense.
care about you losing your daughter, and that's why you have to relate to this young girl so much. It's okay. She's cute. We all relate to her.
We
Yeah,
got
no. And
it.
that's what King was bitching about on Twitter. Sorry. Nice segue, though.
Have you ever have you seen the girl that knows everything? Come on, we all like her. It's okay.
Yeah. So I've got a few keys that we may have missed, if you have any.
Please do.
Back to when we were talking about Eleanor and the rocks and being clairvoyant or telekinetic or whatever is obviously a reference to Carrie as well, um, the first Stephen
Hmm.
King novel. But when we started talking about prophetic dreams, about her opening the door and seeing the morgue, and we were talking about how that's been done and done, Scrooge came to mind with the ghost showing Ebenezer his past, present, and future.
Hmm.
Another one that we should have picked up on immediately is Macbeth, because the witches
Oh
show
yeah.
Macbeth what's going to happen, to him, and
Yep. They give him the
right.
premonitions,
And this,
and he sees a
yeah,
ghost of his murdered
hmm,
victims.
exactly. So this is nothing new. It's just just another key. That's
Yep, yep,
been
yep,
going
yep.
on for centuries
Good
in
catch.
literature and in film and theater. Another one I had is we talked about the banging on the walls of the kid that Poppy describes drowning, and then we see later the girls are scared because they're hearing banging on the walls in the past and in the present. Um, I
Yep.
don't know if you remember it very well, but there's a great haunted house movie called The Changeling with George C. Scott,
Oh yeah,
where
one of
a
my
kid is
favorites.
murdered in a bathtub, and the banging you hear is the kid beating on the tub as she's drowning, or he, I can't remember.
Yep,
That's
it's a
okay.
he. Yeah, I remember that.
I love that movie. That's another one. Um,
That was a good
yeah, it's
movie.
a really good uh, paranormal movie, which, like we've
Yep.
said before, a lot of these keys end up being paranormal keys.
Yeah, those are
Yeah,
good
I
keys,
think that
though.
was all I
Those are good
had
catches.
actually. So unless you have any, we can move on and
No,
close.
I do not have any. That was
Yeah.
it. Um,
So
cool. So that was episode
yeah,
9.
one left.
Those of you who are still listening to us and still with us, we have one left. And we'll get to that one next week, which is the very final episode of Hill House. And we find out what actually happens when they all get together again.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna look up the name.
But until then, write us, review us, like us, as we always say. Favorite us, tell all your friends about us. And we will see you next week on this very same podcast.
Yep. Thanks everybody.